Welcome once again to the Cow Report. I'm your host, Chuck Lee, and as usual, coming to you from the beautiful downtown L.E. Phillips Memorial Library and Taco Stand. And right as of this moment, the Loyal Order of the Raccoons, Chapter Number 1, is now in session. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. And as usual, I want to introduce you to my rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred, Mr. Majestic Stafford.
No, I'm not Mr. Majestic. Just
Okay,
Fred.
all right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Welcome
to the program.
Glad you found your way back here, Fred.
You betcha.
Kind of like one of them old dogs. You always find your way home. And of course, Fred has been down here. He's been the tour guide down here at the
I'm not the tour guide.
Cow Report Studios now for what, 20, 25 years, Fred?
No,
I don't know what you're going to do when we move to the new building.
I don't know either.
All right, I hear there's another guy that's got another show here in town that he's not going to move over there because he's afraid of elevators.
Yeah.
That's just a rumor. Okay, Freddie. Well, as usual, we have a lot to talk about, Fred.
Yes, sir. You bet.
And you know, first of all, we try to take care of some in-house cleaning here and get things straightened out. And you know, Fred, we always try to stump you and see if you know what happened on this date in history.
I don't know what happened on this date in history.
Of course, today is July 17th, and one of your old friends in the Republican Party, it's his actual birthday today. We brought it up last week, but Gordy Still, I think, is 112 today.
He's what?
I think he's 112 today.
No, he's
July
not.
17th.
He's not.
Okay. July 17th, Fred.
Yes.
The Apollo-Soyuz International Space Docking is successful in 1975. What two countries were involved in that?
Russia and USA.
You're so very right. Since you got that one right, Fred, we'll slip another one in here and we'll get on with business. This is a few days from now, Fred, but on July 20th, 1993, the highest ranking official in any in this government since 1963 dies under mysterious conditions, and his name is?
What was the date?
July 20th, 1993, 30 days after President Kennedy dies. This is the highest ranking official in the United States government to die since the Kennedy assassination.
Was it
July 20th, 1993.
Nixon?
July 20th, 1993. This is part of the Clinton administration.
The highest...
highest ranking official in the Clinton administration.
Maybe it's Foster.
That's right. Vince Foster dies under mysterious conditions, Fred, and we'll be going into that on the show today. And, of course, you know, Freddie, every time at this year, people go out and they start picking their marijuana.
They do?
And the smart ones do, because they know that the state government is very slow and very ignorant on the growth and cultivation of marijuana. So what they do, Fred, is the state puts out an announcement when they're going to start going out into the fields and cutting down the marijuana. Of course, they tip off all the intelligent marijuana growers, so they get theirs out of the way so that the Wisconsin Department of Justice can move in August and September and start cutting it down. Well, what they find then in August and September is ditchweed. They bring in the state troops and the helicopters, and they make a big show of it, but they really don't nail much. They make a big show of piling up and burning it, but usually it's just what they call ditchweed. So we have a preview, Fred, a month ahead of the state government, and we have some pictures here of what marijuana looks like in this area for anyone that has a farm or a patch out in the country or is concerned with a certain weed that they don't know what it looks like. And the first photograph is on the front page here. And we'll see if we can get that in. There's an 800 number there, 1-800-NAB-DRUG. And that is what a marijuana leaf looks like close up. It kind of hangs down like your hand. It kind of hangs off the center stalk, and they just kind of, it's usually 5 or 7 or 6 leaves. They just kind of hang down like that. Okay, that's the the easiest way to identify the marijuana. Of course, there's the 1-800 NAB drugs, and that's 622-3784. Okay, we have an inside picture here that shows the difference between the male and the female. Now you see the male will start to be dying off here this time of year, Fred. The male starts shrinking up, and it's kind of a small little puny plant compared to the real healthy female plant. And there is the large plant in the background is the female plant. As you can see, it looks like almost like a Christmas tree. And those at the top and on the ends of the plant there are what they call the buds. And as you can see, that is starting to bud out. That's what the marijuana will start looking like the first part of August. The trouble with waiting till then to eradicate it is it's already started dropping its seeds. And so guaranteeing that it will have a fresh crop in the same spot next year, and that's where the state keeps screwing up, Fred. They haven't got it straight yet, that you go after it and you harvest it before the seeds fall.
Mm-hmm.
That way you don't have to worry about coming back to thousands of different locations, thousands of the same locations each year and eradicating it all over again. If you get it before the seeds fall, you don't have to worry about it because there's thousands of seeds in each plant. Now, one more time, when we get a close-up, I'll show you the difference between the male and the female. This little puny thing here is the male. Once it's impregnated the female, it pretty much dries up and dies away, and you won't see any of those buds or anything, but you'll see how much different there is. Almost looks like a different type of weed, but that is the male marijuana plant. The female is the strong, healthy one here. And that will grow right up to frost, right up to a hard freeze. That'll stay green like that. It will actually start turning a gold color in the fall, but it'll keep life in it right up to the time of a hard freeze. So, once again, 1-800-622-3784. If you see some out there. Now, if it looks like it's being cultivated, just don't go wading in there because there could be some booby traps in there. From some of the more experienced growers, they guard their plants because they're using a high potency seed, usually a Colombian seed or a foreign seed, and it grows a much superior plant to the ditchweed that's found in Wisconsin. So you got to be careful. You just don't want to wade in there. You're liable to get shot or fall into some of the old Vietnam-style booby traps or wires, or there's trip wires, all kinds of different gadgets out there for the experienced growers to use to signal them that you're coming. So if you see it, just don't go run up there and grab some of it. You're liable to get hurt. Go back and phone that number or phone the local sheriff. Make sure the local sheriff is not smoking it. Make sure you see them destroy it right there on the site, or ask them a couple days later what they did with it, because some of the law enforcement people tend to smoke marijuana too. So make sure you got somebody that's honest that's going to go out there and actually destroy the plant. Okay, Fred, you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Was there a lot of smoking going on back in the 30s?
No.
What about Cab Calloway and all that stuff?
What about him?
Well, he was a pothead. He used to sing songs about it.
I never heard him sing one.
Reefer Man was one of his famous songs. He wasn't talking about a refrigerated truck.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Freddie. Well, you know, on this show we like to let people call in, and when you start calling in, we ask that you ask a legitimate question and try to keep the foul language down, and there's plenty. Fred has been around for what now? 80, 90 years, Fred, and you're pretty intelligent, so there's plenty of different questions that you can ask, legitimate questions you can ask Fred, and he'll answer them.
Yeah.
Okay, Freddie. You know, there's some disturbing news coming out of London here, Fred, on the AIDS epidemic and the AIDS disease, the HIV-infected.
Mm-hmm.
They've taken groups of AIDS patients and compared them, two different groups, compared groups to other groups of AIDS patients, a like number that were treated with all kinds of different of the ATZs and all the different drugs. And you know what they came up with, Fred? There's roughly 400 in each group. It didn't make any difference if you took the AZT or all the sophisticated drugs out there. It didn't increase your life one bit. In other words, it's almost like a placebo. It really doesn't do much. But so it gets back to the same old thing, Fred. How do you avoid getting AIDS? How?
How? Abstain.
Or stay within a marriage?
Yes.
Okay. Don't be hanging around the dirty bookstores and bringing something home to your wife. It's another way to keep from getting it. Don't rely on condoms that leak almost 20% of the time. Okay, Freddie. Because the drugs they have out there are not going to save your life. And don't rely on a drug. Don't go out there and do foolish things and then rely on hoping that some miracle drug is going to save you, because at this point in time there is no miracle drug out there. All right, Fred, what do you got there today? I hear you've been studying up on the latest index of the new Congress, and it appears that a lot of these so-called hardcore conservatives aren't as conservative as we think they are, and it's all a bunch of mishmash, double talk, and funny business. And the number one funny man out there is Newt. What did you come up with on some statistics on him?
Oh, Newt voted 33% of the time with conservatively. In other words, 67% of the time he wasn't conservative.
You know, almost every time you see Newt, he's pushing this Alvin Toffler and his wife in this new book they've got. Toffler and the Third Wave and all that stuff. He wrote several books, but he's got a new book out with a foreword by Newt. And Newt says Toffler this and Toffler that. Well, Toffler wants to get in there and crush the U.S. Constitution.
He does.
Yeah. But make no mistake about it, Fred. Newt Gingrich's plan is to drag this country kicking, stomping, and fighting and biting into the New World Order. And I've got some more information on that we'll be bringing up later in the show about the kickoff for the final 5 years to launch us into the New World Order by the year 2000. So, Freddie, what do you got to say for yourself today? What do you got there? I know you got the Wanderer.
Well, I was looking at GATT, WTO, HR 5110, and I see that not only did Newt support it, but it was supported by Bob Dole and by Phil Gramm. And those is legislation that will take jobs out of the United States, and that we're having, as we have noticed, a falling off, particularly in manufacturing jobs. They have located them in Mexico and other places.
Well, it certainly hasn't stemmed the tide of illegal aliens flooding across the southern borders.
No.
If there's so many jobs that they're going to offer the Mexicans and people south of Mexico, why are they still flooding in here at the rate of, who knows, over 3,000 a night in just certain areas of the southern border? And why has Clinton continued to look the other way and put a little window dressing on it and say that, oh yeah, we sent 100 of them back? Well, big deal. If 3,000 are coming in and they send back 100, they're never going to get the problem solved.
Right.
But it's a sad state of affairs, Freddie. And but of course the New World Order and GATT and all that stuff, that all plays in together. The economic EU, the European Economic Union over there, of all the European states that are joining together to kind of form their conglomerate. Yeah. Well, the North America wants to form theirs, and actually they want to go from the tip of Alaska all the way down to the southern tip of South America. That's what. Yes. That's the trading group that they want to form over here. And now not only did the United States renew ties with Vietnam last week, Fred, but also did the European Union. They did the same thing just a couple days after we did. So, and that reminds me, Fred. Now you were in World War II, and you know it was a different kind of war. But here we still got 2,000 troops missing over there in Vietnam and Laos. What do you think about them renewing those
I am
diplomatic relations?
strongly opposed to it. I don't think that we should until they make an accounting of the missing in action and the POWs.
Well, that's that's true, Fred. There has still been sightings of, they know for sure that there were live Americans in Laos when we abandoned them there. And according to other eyewitness sightings, there were Americans in Vietnam that were left behind alive. They're probably long gone, or some of them were supposedly shipped up to Russia, to the slave camps there. Some of them were put into coal mines in North Korea. Some of them were shipped up to North Vietnam into some of the mining up there, and some were sent to China for experimentation on them physically, you know, torture. They were torturing them basically, tested them to see what kind of different exotic drugs and different kinds of operations they could do on them. Well, they used Americans and others that fought in Korea and in Vietnam to experiment on them. So they are butchers over there, Fred, and they still haven't made an accounting of over 2,000 Americans. And before we start throwing billions of dollars at them, we ought to get a better accounting.
I agree 100% with you.
Okay, Freddie. Well, as you know, Fred, you got the voting record there. Are there any other staunch conservatives that all of a sudden came up lily liberal?
Well,
I know Sonny Bono ain't the big hotshot conservative. He's only about 53% or something like that.
mm-hmm.
Now, Steve Gunderson, of all people, is about 60 or 65% conservative.
63, I think.
That's pretty good for Steve.
No, 65%.
That's better than people.
Mark Newman, congressman from down Janesville way, 63%. Scott Klug, 40%. That's a poor conservative voting record. Gerald Kleka, 23%. Thomas M. Barrett, 30%. Thomas Petrie, 50%, which isn't too good. Dave Obey, 45%. He came up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Toby Roth, 74%, and Jim Sensenbrenner, 80%.
Yeah, Sensenbrenner's always one of the staunch. Him and Toby Roth are usually the two staunchest. Now, we're starting to see limited signs of a little bit of conservatism in Feingold. At least he didn't want to throw away some of our civil rights in this country, and he voted against that so-called terrorist bill,
Right.
which is basically a guise, Fred, for them to get that 100,000-man federal police force for Clinton, is basically what it boils down to, and they're using the unfortunate tragedy in Oklahoma City to push through something that's going to take away quite a bit of our civil rights.
Yes,
And,
Feingold had a 30% voting record, and Herb Kohl, 20%.
When Feingold saw that they were going to be able to just name anybody a terrorist, that the president says is a terrorist, Fred, if the president sends his feds out and says Fred Stafford's a terrorist, you're going to get arrested. Without due process of law, you're going to be thrown in jail until you can prove that you're not a terrorist. And that's probably going to be pretty hard. Wrong line there. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, Duck. Well, I was wondering why you always call the Ellie Phillips Memorial Public Library and Taco Stand, man.
Well, haven't you ever been down here to the restaurant?
No, I just thought it's because tacos are Mexican, you know, and Mexicans grow a lot of dough.
Huh. I didn't know that, Fred. Okay, Freddie. Vince Foster, we brought up his name earlier in the program about 20 minutes ago. Well, you know, Freddie, he died July 20th, 1993. You had that right on the tip of your tongue all the way there. You knew that right away. Well, back in February of 94, some of the first articles and some of the questions started coming out about what really happened to Vince. Well, you know, the hearings are going to be starting, the Senate hearings are starting, I think, this week, Fred, the D'Amato hearings.
Yes.
And what is this to show for D'Amato of New York? What's the show for him for a voting record? Anyway, D'Amato is leading the charge on the so-called expose of the Whitewater affair
65%.
and the Vince Foster death. And there has been a lot of controversy surrounding that death, Fred. And first of all, Robert Fisk was put in there, and he was a front man for Janet Reno and Bill Clinton. And the word started getting around that the Fisk was in because Fisk was involved personally in the Whitewater Development Company himself. So he had to step aside because it finally dawned on some of the other senators and representatives in Washington that Fisk was not going to do the job. He was going to cover up for the Clintons. So they brought in a guy named what is his name? Kenneth Starr. Now Starr is supposed to be a little bit better, Fred, but so the Fisk team covered up as much as they could, and now Starr and D'Amato and them are trying to find what's left that hasn't been destroyed, shredded, or hid in Hillary's closet. And they're going to be discussing that, Fred. And a guy named Bernard Nussbaum went in, he entered Foster's office after his death and ransacked it, grabbed as many papers as he could, and got them out of the office. And of course, Bernard Nussbaum pled guilty or quietly slipped out of Washington and disappeared after that. But someone else that has been bringing up information on this whole Whitewater affair, Vince Foster affair, is a guy named Larry Nichols, Fred.
Yes.
And his team of people and some other people that have been investigating this for 5 years now have dug up 35 murders that are directly involved with the Clintons and this Whitewater and Vince Foster death. And the most recent murder or suspicious death, Fred, was a personal confidant of Vince Foster in his 40s. Cameraman helped him write some of the video stories that Vince has put out. I think a couple of videos now. He just finished up one.
You mean Foster did this or
no,
Nichols?
Not Vince Foster, but Nichols just finished up this one on Vince Foster and some other information that he had, put it into a video. Well, the main, one of the producers and cameramen turned up dead a couple of days ago in his 40s. Prime of his life, healthy, they found him dead. So, Fred, then last Friday, with the Vince Foster stuff and the Whitewater stuff on the front burner, suspiciously, a briefcase with some sensitive papers on the Whitewater Vince Foster affair were stolen from one of the secretaries right in front of the White House. Somebody ran up to her and grabbed her briefcase and stole it. And it had some papers that were going to be used in the upcoming investigation. So it tends to look like they're starting to run scared, Fred. The rats are starting to grab some cheese before they jump off the ship and get out of town. And some of the intelligence that I've been getting in the last couple of weeks, Fred, out of Chicago and other places, says that the Republican leader or the Democratic leadership met with Clinton this weekend, Jay Rockefeller. Of course, you know his bloodline goes with the Rockefeller big money people.
Right.
And also the Gephardt and some of them quietly met with Clinton, and they asked him to resign by July 29th. So that's only 12 days from now. So we'll see what happens, Fred. There's a lot of things going to be revealed in the next few weeks with the Vince Foster affair and the Whitewater, and then right after that, the House starts up with their investigation with the guy from Iowa, Jim Leach, I think it is.
Jim Leach, yeah.
Well, Leach is a liberal. What's his voting record there, Fred? Leach is a front man for the Clintons, too, and he's going to cover up as much as he can in the House. Our only hope is D'Amato to reveal.
Jim Leach, 50%.
Okay, he goes either way. About a lot of issues, he's a rabid liberal. But anyway, Fred, Leach is the front man for the Clintons, and his job is to help cover up the investigation in the House. And he's done a pretty good job with it over the last year. So D'Amato is the man that everyone's looking to reveal some of this information that's being whitewashed and whitewatered and covered up and shredded and hid down in Arkansas and in Washington. And of course, D'Amato had a suspicious heart attack here a few months ago. And when that didn't kill him off, they revealed to the press that he had a secret affair with a rich Jewish millionaires, Jewish millionaires out there, and they tried to embarrass him that way, but he didn't care. He's in love with the woman. He's been separated from his wife for 12 years, but it was revealed that he's going with this rich Jew, and they were hoping that that would soil his character by saying he was going with a Jew, which has nothing to do with it. But she is a millionaire, Fred, and so they're banding that around, and then I guess they went after D'Amato's brother and tried to do some shenanigans with him. But D'Amato supposedly is hanging tough, and he's got a lot of information that could blow things wide open, and it could end up with the impeachment of the President of the United States and unsealing an indictment that's already been handed down against Hillary Clinton for the theft of $50 million, which was transferred from a bank in Chicago down to Little Rock, Arkansas, to that bank down there that's had so much trouble. McDougal and all that stuff. But that's all going to come out, hopefully. And that's why, Fred, all of a sudden, Bill Clinton is being called Republican light. All of a sudden, he's talking about school prayer, and he's making a major shift here.
Yes.
Being conservative, and I think it appears like he's doing it to try and save his hide and gracefully bow out, or if he goes far enough to the right, maybe they'll leave him alone. But I think it's gone beyond that, Fred. There's too many bodies piling up. So in the meantime, Freddie, we better take a call here. We got the phones backed up all the way to Cleveland. People want to get on here.
Well, take your call.
Now, what is this with the limbo cab? What's a limbo cab? Is that something to do with Rush Limbaugh?
Limo cab. They have them right here in Eau Claire.
Oh.
You want to ride in a limousine? That's the kind of a cab it is.
I thought it was something to do with Rush Limbaugh.
No.
Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, what's up?
Not too much.
That's good. How's Fred doing?
Great.
There he is, back in the prime of life again.
Yeah, there he is. Feeling better?
Yes, yes.
Getting kind of sick and tired of your hat, Chuck.
You are.
Yeah, I think next week we have a line and shove it so far up your...
This is the official hat of the Royal Orders of the Raccoons. Of course, Fred, there was another fine example of somebody that couldn't speak the King's English, so we had to, I think they had to go to the bathroom or something. They left us real quick there. So we'll take another call here real quick, and then we'll get back to what you're studying there. And you said D'Amato's pretty conservative there.
Yeah, he is.
All right. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, why is that hole in the cow? Did you screw it?
That must have been one of those illegal aliens, Fred. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Yes.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
All right.
I gotta like that hat. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's an original raccoon hat, and of course, I am the chief potentate of the Loyal Order of the Raccoons, Chapter Number 1, right here in Chippewa Valley.
Where do you think I could get one of those, Chuck?
Well, you have to join the Loyal Order of the Raccoons.
Okay. What about that Flavin Pop? What's in that?
That there is a secret that was handed down from the the fine folks at Flavin and from the old country.
Okay.
And there's only 3 people that know what's exactly in it, and 2 of them are dead.
Yeah.
Oh, so that means you're the last one?
Well, actually, me and Fred. Fred plays like he doesn't know what's in it, but he helps mix it up every week. I don't know what his problem is.
You okay, Fred?
Yeah.
Well, I offered him a Kleenex before the show, but he tries to tough it out.
Yeah.
There, you got it. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
All right, well, thanks for calling in. We appreciate those fine, intelligent calls, Freddie.
Yes.
Okay, getting back to this Foster thing before we take another call, Fred.
Yes.
The late Deputy White House Counsel has become a key figure in the White Watergate due to the removal from his White House office just a few hours after his death of files involving the Clinton Whitewater real estate investigation in Arkansas.
Yes.
All right, here's some of the stuff, Fred. Nagging questions. Stories of irregularities in their financial dealings have trailed the Clintons from Little Rock to Washington. Officially, the U.S. Park Police ruled Foster's death a suicide, but serious questions still remain to this day. Many newsmen, as an example, still question the White House's handling of a key piece of evidence found in the Foster's briefcase, Fred, and that was the so-called, supposedly, the suicide note, which was torn into 28 pieces and just so happens that only 27 of them were found. The 28th piece fits right where your signature should go. So that piece is missing. The other 27 were, after several hours of stonewalling on it, the White House released this so-called suicide note. The note was not discovered when Foster White House office and his briefcase were initially searched, Fred. It turned up several days later, found by an aide, going through papers in the office. The Justice Department, after dragging its feet for days, released only the text of the reconstructed document, which seemed to indicate Foster was suffering depression. But the Justice Department refused to show the actual document itself or to give out copies so that people could compare the handwriting samples of Foster to this so-called note without a signature. And also, Freddie, on this note, there were no fingerprints found. I guarantee if there's fingerprints on something the FBI has a hold of, they can find the fingerprints. They got quite sophisticated equipment. Making matters even more suspicious is the missing 28th, we already went through that, 28th piece of the torn note, which had Foster's, supposedly his signature on it. Now, Foster was a close friend of Clinton's all the way back to his boyhood days in Hope, Arkansas, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also a law partner with Hillary. And he was found of a gunshot wound, supposedly a single gunshot wound to the head on July 20th. Now, the gun that they supposedly have is a 1913 Colt 38 caliber military revolver used in the Philippine insurrection, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly the gun didn't have any, the serial number was filed off, but evidently the government was able to raise a serial number for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, was successful in getting a number off the gun, but unsuccessful in tracing it back. So, Freddie, there's still some serious issues going on there with the Foster death and his relationship with Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
And now there's some information surfacing that Foster was in the intelligence corps. He was tied up with this Ames character that's doing life, and also with the Pollard character that was involved in selling secrets to Israel. They're finding out now that Foster made several trips to Geneva, Switzerland, just a few hours on the ground. He'd fly over there and fly back, presumably to take cash over for himself and the Clintons and put into numbered bank accounts and Swiss bank accounts. But the real blockbuster, Fred, which is unraveling now, or which is being revealed, is that Foster and Hillary Clinton were involved in espionage against the United States, and they were helping sell secrets to Israel, documents from this country to Israel, and instead of them taking the blame for it, this Pollard character got arrested, and Caspar Weinberger at the time said he should be hung because they wanted him to keep quiet, but he's languishing in a prison cell right now doing life, Fred. And so supposedly Foster started getting some word that he was going to be exposed as a higher-up major or whatever in the intelligence, in the secret service of this country. And supposedly it was going to be revealed that he'd been shuffling money overseas, and that part of that money was the Clintons. And so he was murdered for that reason, Fred. He was getting nervous. He was afraid he was the next one to be indicted. The heat was coming down, and he was taken out, Fred. CIA style. He got the CIA flu. And that's what happened to him. So we're going to take one more call, Fred, and then we're going to go to your latest blockbuster there. And what do you got on the Foster, the other Foster deal?
This is Dr. Foster.
Okay. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Oh, Chunk, I know why we lost the Vietnam War.
Why is that?
Because all the soldiers were out in the field all the time, stoned off pot.
Yeah, there was marijuana and heroin over there. Several of our military ended up being addicted to heroin, and they stayed behind in Vietnam. Those people have never been accounted for either.
I had two uncles that were killed over there because they were high all the time. And my dad, he's all right, but he came back addicted from marijuana.
Uh-huh. Well, that was a very potent marijuana that was growing over there, and of course the Viet Cong would lace it with the heroin, hoping to get the troops addicted so that they would not be able to fight in the field. And several of them, I've heard stories from other people here in this country that from other Vietnam veterans that said that friends of theirs, because of the impaired judgment of people in the field during battles, some of their friends were killed because of somebody that was stoned on heroin or the potent marijuana or hashish that was in Vietnam during that era.
Yeah, I heard that was pretty bad. They're out in the fields fighting, shooting.
It was kind of a fifth enemy against our troops over there. It was just another way of the communists using the drug against the Americans over there. If you can impair their judgment and their thinking abilities and their reaction time, I think Dave Zien even said that he was in a firefight once, and he knew that one of the guys that caused some of the problems was high on marijuana at the time they went into that fight, and I guess a few people lost their lives. So it's nothing that you should be doing while you're driving a car or fighting in war, because you got to have a sharp mind to be able to murder or to kill.
I personally think that booze was another problem over there. They'd sit out there at their jugs of whiskey before they fought.
Yeah, they only had was that warm beer over there, but they liked to guzzle it, and Budweiser and Miller and them kept it a-flowing in there.
No?
It's kind of ironic that you'd have to keep our troops doped up just so they could go out there and be able to kill fellow human beings, but that's what war is. It's killing people and destroying things that the enemy is coming at you with, like planes and tanks and stuff. So war is nothing but destruction and death and misery.
I think a lot of those soldiers just took pot and got stoned all the time just to take a trip away from the war.
Yeah, it was. My brother was over there for 2 tours, and it changed just about everybody that went over there. Just about everybody who went over there was changed. Fred, what did you think about that?
Well, it certainly did happen, and it's regrettable that so many of our men were using it,
Yeah,
the marijuana.
Yep, and that actually for that time, Fred, that you're talking about the 60s and the 70s, that marijuana was a lot more potent than what was on the streets in this country. Probably 8-10 times as strong. Well, thanks for calling in and giving us your insight on that. And so you're pretty much sure your dad told you that you had 2 relatives that died because of drug use?
Yep. Yeah, my cousins are. I got 4 cousins that were their kids.
Oh.
He didn't. They're. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the drug abuse and alcohol abuse is something that gets a hold of everybody, and it's no respecter of persons. It doesn't matter how rich or poor you are, whether you're in the state, whether you're a state assemblyman down in Madison, Fred, or you're the mayor of a city, or the chief of police, or a sheriff, or a minister. Those drugs and alcohol will pull you down. That's all there is to it. So I want to thank you for calling in today.
Bet, John.
And hang in there.
Yep.
Okay.
Bye.
Yep, Fred, there's just one case of where those drugs did more than just people say, well, why can't I use drugs? I'm not hurting anybody. Well, sometimes you do, especially if you use a bunch of drugs and go out and hop in a car
Mm-hmm.
and roll it over and kill 5 people in it. Then it does affect somebody. All right, Fred, before we get to that Foster deal, I got one announcement here. Now, a lot of people have computers out there and they've got email, and they have a way of getting hold of their, if they want a way of getting hold of their congressman, Gunderson, or whoever, or their U.S. Congress, or actually I have the email address for the Congress, which is congress@hr.house.gov, G-O-V. And by using that email number, you can write a letter to Congress and ask them to give you all the names of everybody in Congress that has an email address. And then you can write to a senator or congressman. And there's quite a few now. I think there's over 100 of them that have email addresses. So once again, that's congress@hr.house.gov, G-O-V. And that will get you the email address of your favorite congressman or woman. Okay, Fred, now what's going on with this Vince Foster before we take another call? Not Vince Foster, but this is Rupert Foster, isn't it?
Foster was Henry Foster.
All right,
Dr.
Henry Foster.
And Majority Leader Dole had a ready response from a review prepared by the Congressional Research Committee. Showed that since '68, there are 24 previous cloture votes on nominees, including Chief Justice William Rehnquist. Dole also sought to contrast how things were run when the Democrats controlled Congress, showing that in 6 Reagan-Bush years, there were 11 nominees denied floor votes despite being voted out of committee, 18 nominees under 2 Republican presidents got hearings but no vote. A staggering 166 nominees were not even given the courtesy of a committee hearing.
Now, what's that got to do with Vince Foster?
Well, he was defeated.
All right.
He was voted out of committee and defeated.
Is that before he committed suicide?
This is Dr. Henry Foster.
Oh, he's pro-abortion, isn't he?
Yes.
Didn't he perform several hundred of them?
He performed a number of them. Yes.
Yeah, he was quite the character. They couldn't finally figure out exactly where he stood on a lot of things, so they flushed him down. But I understand in the end there, Dole and Graham were both groveling to try and get him appointed.
Yeah, and Dole went on to say that in the last 2.5 years, President Clinton submitted 248 names to Senate for confirmation to civilian positions. Several have been controversial, but not one has been defeated in committee or here on the floor. Not one.
That's right, Fred. They put in Janet Reno, I think, 97-3. It's amazing what they do out there, Fred. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Jock,
Yeah.
I'd like to talk to Fred first, okay?
All right.
Yes?
Fred,
Yes.
I know your daughter,
Good.
inside and out. And, Jock,
Yeah.
you know how you're always talking about all these scandals and everything in the government and stuff?
Say, are you the guy that called Fred before the show today?
Yeah.
At his house?
No, I'm just kidding. I had no idea about that. No, I want to talk about the scandals and stuff.
Yeah.
You're always talking about them, and you're always about Congress is all messed up and Clinton's all messed up.
Yeah.
No one cares.
They don't.
No, they don't listen to you. They want to just call in and have fun, you know? I mean, first of all, you're so talking out of your ass the whole time. Don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, thank you for watching. I'm glad, Fred, that they don't care, but they watch.
Yes.
So hopefully one little grain of, one seed of conservatism or one seed of doubt or that everything's hunky-dory in the world, and maybe it'll start making them think a little bit. Instead of just going out and drinking a can of beer or smoking a joint or whatever, maybe they'll think a little bit, Fred. And maybe they'll get into history or something, or into political science, and or into the health field, and not just buy it when a teacher says, here, put on this condom, and you go out and have sex with 20 women or 20 men, and don't worry about it. Maybe they'll make them think, Fred.
Yes.
Now, I know that you like that Henry Foster guy, Fred, and
I didn't like him, no.
well, you know, as a human being. But we better take a call, and then we got to get on to this New World Order, Fred.
Yes.
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, Chuck, I was wondering, what's up with your hat?
What do you mean?
Why is there a coon on it?
A raccoon. This is the Loyal Order of the Raccoons.
Oh, did you kill it or did you, buy it?
My brother stuffs these. They're roadkills.
Oh, what happened to that glove that you used to wear?
I had to send it back to the O.J. Simpson trial.
Oh, all
For
right.
evidence.
Gee, thanks a hell of a lot.
Okay, thanks a lot. All right, Freddie. Well, you know, coming up here, Fred, you remember Gorbachev,
How could I forget him?
the one that helped create the grand illusion that communism fell?
Yeah.
Part of the 2 steps backwards to take 1 forward. Usually the 1 forward is about 3 times as long as the 2 they took back.
Yes.
Well, Gorbachev is being funded by the United States now. You know, he's got a 501c3 status, which means that he can take donations from Americans that are duped into believing that he's going to save the world. And he created what's called the Gorbachev Foundation, Gorbachev, created in 1992 to address the immediate challenges of the post-Cold War world and assist in the process of building global consensus for our common future. And, well, anyway, Fred, he's located in, of all places, the Presidio.
Is that
Now,
right?
isn't that a military base?
I think so.
Well, he's got his headquarters out there. As if I recall, it was Steve Gunderson and a bunch of his cronies that voted to keep the Presidio going so that Gorbachev would have a free home to supply his communist wares in this country. Well, anyway, Freddie, he's in the Presidio, and now we're finding out. He's been behind the scenes running all over the world using American dollars to do this and that, but since 1992, he claims it's a nonpartisan, nonprofit educational foundation, but it's called Gorbachev Foundation USA. Well, now we're finding out what the scoop is, Fred, what he's been doing for the last 3 years. What he's been doing is he's been going around the world gathering the One World, New World Order crowd from all over the world. He's going to have his big conclave September 27th through October 1st, 1995 in San Francisco. I assume it'll be at the Presidio. And the name of this big conclave, a meeting of the minds of all the world's liberal leaders, is called Towards a New Civilization, Launching a Global Initiative. In other words, Fred, this is the kickoff of the New World Order. And their plan is to launch a multi-year process culminating in the year 2000 to articulate the fundamental priorities, values, and actions necessary to constructively shape our common future. And they've got some pretty impressive people coming to this deal, Freddie. Some of the major leaders and former leaders of the world, including the richest man in the world, Gates, one that owns Microsoft. They're going to have what's called 100 fellows that'll show up. And some of the interesting workshops that are coming up, Fred, is the global crisis of spirit and the search for meaning, the roots of human violence, frontiers of spirituality, Asia mind and Western mind. But here's one that's kind of scary, Fred. It's about population. And these 100 participants, only 100 people are going to be able to, these 100 fellows, they call them. One of their goals is to lay out a blueprint or a map that they want to put into place by the year 2000. One part of the blueprint is to get the so-called population overflow in this world back in control. And so they're coming up with, some of the workshops are called A New Relationship with the Earth, Facing the Planet's Carrying Capacity. In other words, they want to they consider that there's too many people, and they want the next 5 years to figure out how to get rid of some of the people on Earth so that we can get back to the planet's carrying capacity.
Well, one of the best ways to do that would be to get rid of Gorbachev and the people that he's having come to San Francisco.
And then there's another one called the Earth Charter, Creating a Bill of Rights for Nature.
Mm-hmm.
And another one is the environmental impact of rising prosperity. So they don't want it's an impact to be prosperous, Fred. They want to be one world socialism.
They're going to bring up the third world and bring us down.
Anyway, Fred, some of the big shots that are involved in this are Dwayne Andreas. Of course, he'd be there, ADM. He pushes his corn and soybeans all over the world. Zygmunt Brzezinski, there's another fine example of liberal socialism. Lester Brown, president of World Watch, he's another one world leftist. Peter Gabriel, composer and performer. Javier Perez de Cuellar, Fred, he's the former Secretary General of the United Nations. Gordon Humphreys, U.S. Senator. President Bush. Okay, we got a couple calls we'll take here in a second. Just wanted to read off a few more of these names. Richard Leakey, the one that's so-called found the missing link and all that stuff, and found all the skeletons and stuff that made us relatives with the monkey. Colin Powell's going to be there. George Shultz, Alvin Toffler, remember him?
Yes. How could I forget?
Oliver Stone,
Yes.
Ted Turner, Desmond Tutu,
Yes.
Paul Volcker, Timothy Worth.
Yes.
But what they're doing, Fred, is they're going to sit down for those days there, September 27th to October 1st, and they're going to hammer out the New World Order and try and implement it by the year 2000. And
Let's hope they're not going to be successful.
We're in for a rough 5 years, Fred, for them to do it. We've already seen some of the charades with the so-called downfall of Eastern Europe and the communist downfall in Russia and all that, which is a bunch of baloney. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, Chuck, you were talking about at the beginning of how that you're showing that marijuana pamphlet, how the sheriffs go out and pick it and they smoke it. Well, some of them. Well, the sheriff around my town, he's always driving around baked off his ass. I was just wondering how those bastards get away with that.
What do you mean? He smokes or drinks or what?
Yeah, going around, driving around in a car high.
Well, don't give the town you're in, but what I would suggest you do is, what do you think he is, a Democrat or a Republican?
He'd probably be a Democrat.
Well, then you need to call somebody in Madison that's a Republican, because if you call the Wisconsin Department of Justice, they'll look the other way and tip him off that you called. So what you need to do is call, who would they be a good one to call, Fred? Call the governor's office.
Okay, I want to nail that bastard.
And tip him off. Don't give his name over the air, but tip him off and see if you can meet with somebody from the governor's office and tell them who you think it is, and then see if you can make a deal with him where you can call him back when you actually see this sheriff drunk or stoned or smoking a joint, and then they can nail him.
Okay, thanks a lot, Chuck.
All right.
See you later, Fred.
So long. You know, that must be here.
I don't know, Fred. Okay, Freddie. So, are you going to jump on the bandwagon here and get on there with Ted Turner and Jane Fonda and them?
No way. No way.
Jane Fonda and them, and get in there?
No, I'm...
It'll be one big love fest on this big mud ball of an earth, Fred, and we're all going to just roll in the mud together. It's just going to be one love fest. Of course, there's going to be a couple billion people that have to be eliminated.
Yes.
Because we're at the carrying capacity. You know, in reality, Fred, we could put all the people in the United States into Texas, and they'd still have plenty of room to roam around.
Well, you could
There's
put some of them up here in the north of Wisconsin, too.
Look at Australia, how big it is, and how little population.
The upper peninsula of Michigan.
Or Wyoming, Fred, there's just all kinds of open spaces. It's all baloney.
Yes.
What it is people like this Maurice Strong, you've probably heard of him. Well, he's involved in this thing, too.
Yes.
And these people, Hans Dietrich Genscher and some of these other people, Jane Goodall, the gorilla idiot, all these people, you know, during that thing over in Rwanda, Fred, when 500,000 people were getting slaughtered over there with hatchets and guns and sticks and stuff, I heard one idiot say, well, I hope they don't harm the gorillas. I mean, here's 500,000 bodies laying there, Fred, and this guy's worried about a gorilla.
Mm-hmm.
That shows you how far these idiots have gone. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, how you doing, Chuck? You guys were talking about the population control. Do you think that the way Asia is working right now, with Hong Kong going back to China in '97, that there could be a powder keg getting ready to blow the United States and Russia against China? I think that would solve your population problem.
Well, there's always been a three-way deal there, China, Russia, and the United States, and whenever Russia gets mad at the United States, they buddy up to China, and whenever China gets mad at the United States, they buddy up to Russia, and whenever China's mad at Russia, they buddy up to the United States, and it's just that triangle that's been going on for probably 40, 50 years now. And China claims to have a right to Hong Kong and to Taiwan, and Taiwan's been a fly in the ointment because Taiwan has been independent since 1949. They don't want to be part of the communist mainland. Taiwan has their own vibrant economy and they want to go their own way. Well, China has always used that as one of their cards to balk at any kind of liberalization of their economy to make it freer. And so that's why the world is throwing them Hong Kong, giving them back Hong Kong and hoping that will appease the sleeping giant, but the sleeping giant is 1.2 billion people. about 25% of the world. And that's another thing about carrying capacity. Look how small China is, and it's got 1.2 billion. And they're doing just fine over there. But yes, you're right about that. I don't know if it'll ever come to blows, but in the New Testament of the Bible, it says the kings of the East will send 200 million troops westward towards Israel in the end time. So where else could you get 200 million troops, either from India or China?
I agree totally, but you know, you've always got that communist thing, and since Russia's turned over to more or less a capitalist system, that China is the last great country that is posing a problem to this world order you're speaking of.
Unfortunately, Russia has not turned over to a
Well, they're starting to move that way.
capitalist system. You've got a few people out front that all the reporters chase down and write about, but by and large, the people still walk by the rows and rows of apartment houses with their heads hanging down, their faces a gray color skin. They're defeated. I know people that are over there working as missionaries. Nothing has changed in Russia. It's still the same communist people in the same positions, the mayors and everybody. There's just a few little spots where people have been put into office. But even Yeltsin has backed off from the glory days when he was supposedly going to liberate the people. Right now there's another scheme. Several times the Russian government has forced the Russians to turn in their old rubles for new ones because of inflation. Now the latest scheme is that they're going to introduce a new American $100 bill that doesn't look anything like our dollar bill. That's going to be introduced into Russia, and they're only going to have a few days to turn in their rubles or their old $100 bills for new ones. And that's how the banks make a killing off this, because the little old ladies with the 5,000 rubles or the $3,000 in the $100 bills or whatever, they don't have time to get down there and fight through the crowds to get to the banks in time. And usually Russia says, we're going to start this on Friday and it's going to end on Monday. And they usually announce it on a Friday afternoon, just when everyone's leaving to go home and the banks are shut down. And that's the way they've grabbed the rubles and made the people even poorer over there. But by no means is communism dead in Russia. As a matter of fact, we're almost on the horizon of a new communist takeover of Russia because Yeltsin's sick right now.
Yeah. Well, thanks for taking my call, Chuck, and I think you and Fred are doing a great job. Just keep it up.
Okay, we appreciate the call. All right, Freddie, what do you got there?
Well,
got 1 minute
I've got something about the conservative index, the New Americans Conservative Index, first conservative index of the 104th Congress, pages 21 to 31, rates Representative F. James Sensenbrenner, a Republican, as the top scoring conservative in the House with an 80% score.
Huh, we already knew that, Fred. You already read that. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, we got 1 minute. What's up?
Oh, okay. I was just wondering about, like, Gorbachev and stuff. I don't really think he was all that bad, the whole communist system, because...
Gorbachev was what was called a communist with a face, but he's still a communist. He's never refuted his communist ways. He's got books out there. He tells about his form of communism. It's still communism. He wants to put you in communes. He wants to keep the masses down at the bottom, and he wants to have a handful of bureaucrats at the top, much like we have in this country.
Yeah, but I don't think the whole idea of communism is all that bad, because, I mean, sure, they had it tough over there, but given the right environment, people could really flourish from all being in the same pool economically.
Yes, I know. I've talked to missionaries over there to say that 70 years of communism, all it's created is a bunch of robots that hang their heads down as they walk by to the factories and hang their heads down as they come home. There's no freedom over there. They had 75 years to do something with communism, and they blew it because communism is a failed system. And that's about it for today, Freddie.
Yes.
And this has been the Cow Report with Chuck Lee, and we're glad that you could tune in today. And we'll be right back here again on the 24th at 9 p.m. And we hope that you'll tune in. I want to thank you very much. And we want to thank Roy Rogers Hoff and Joel Desprez. And we'll see you right here again next week. Adios.
Arrivederci. That was her. Dave's girl Friday up in Chippewa.